right. Very good. Okay. So welcome everybody. This is the group 2 meeting on uh, October, January 29th at 8:30 a.m. I'd like to call a roll call, so I'll go through the roll. Commissioner Corbett,
Here,
Commissioner Parrott,
he's on
Commissioner,
mute.
you're
Here,
on mute.
here. Sorry, I'm off
Great, great,
mute now.
great. No worries. All right. Commissioner Kimes,
Present.
great, and Commissioner Home. Super. So, just to go through briefly the agenda today, what we're going to discuss, and we can continue these topics going forward if we need to, which I suspect we will. Term limits, and then secondarily, we're going to go through Article 2, as well as an excerpt of the Article 5, just for the Audit Committee. So just to be sure, I had sent around some notes and comments I made. What I will do for the purposes of this call is share the drafts or share those articles as we go through them so everyone can see them. And just as I said, I don't believe Russ, I'm not sure if you were on the phone, on the Zoom. Um, I put my comments in the side, so the text that you'll see is unaltered. It's directly from the actual charter itself. And then what we'll do is if there's edits, comments, or things made, we'll basically do them afterwards and I'll post them later. Okay? Is everyone good with that sort of approach?
Yes.
Excellent. So, and let me see if there's anyone in the audience. Nope. Super. Excellent. So let's start talking about term limits. If you like, I'd like to just give a brief overview. I did some work and shared it. Um, So I recently went through and sort of did some research on term limits in general in regard to the state and came across mixed, I would say, information in the sense that the state claims that it's silent. I sent along a document that was actually from the State Research Library that basically was, I would say, inconclusive in the sense of definitive in that it allows term limits or doesn't allow term limits. Now, my understanding as part of the reading of the law is if something is silent, it doesn't mean that it's permitted, but it doesn't mean that it's not permitted. So this was one sort of data point that I took. Now, that opinion or that research was done as of 2001. Um, so that basically, it's been some time. I did ask Kathleen too if we could follow up with the law firm to see if there's any state or court cases in regards to that. And I know that you're ongoing in doing that. Second, I also found an article from a lawyer who basically advised a charter review commission, I believe in Middlebury. Um, and that he basically went through his logic as to why term limits were basically not permissible. Interestingly enough, there are two towns, excluding, let's say, our audit committee, which has term limits, Wilton, which is being the closest town, and Bethel. Wilton has a term limit for the select people, not the select person, which is required. It's 2 consecutive terms. But what was interesting in the article from the Charter Review Commission opinion was that it cited that Wilton, this was from 2023, this article. I believe I'm going to get his name wrong. Munchin? I think Kathleen, you might know him. Um, he did cite in a footnote that he reached out to the law firm who at the time then was becoming the town attorney for Wilton and had a conversation which said that that town attorney was now new to the town, and that town attorney at the time did not feel that the term limit that was put in had met a standard. So once again, slightly inconclusive there. Then the third one was Pullman and Colmy on a Board of Ed article. She too, the woman who wrote the article, ironically too, I would just say this, there was a lot of mirroring of the same language in the Munchkin article that was in the Pullman Colmy article. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Suffice to say, um, the Board of Ed discussion, similar to term limits, was inconclusive as well, saying it wasn't permitted, but it wasn't non-permissible. So that's where we stood that's where I stood in terms of research. Um, And yeah, so Kathleen, would you like to add?
I just asked a clarifying question. In that research, did it, I think it distinguished in some cases elected versus appointed?
Yes, there was some distinguishment there as well. Um, in the online research from the state, it didn't distinguish between that at all.
Hmm.
Um, and then from the one
Because they're
from
silent on both.
silent on all of it. Yep.
Yeah.
And it actually cited a New Canaan court case about recalls, but wasn't on point and noted that it wasn't on point. So they had found very little, let's say, court cases in terms of term limits, recalls, etc. Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Kathleen, did this ever come up with council 10 years ago? Was this something that our legal counsel ever opined on?
They did not opine on that. We did as a commission talk about it in terms of, as we went through all of the articles and all of the different themes. And as you heard from Dave Hunt at his presentation to this commission now, uh, the prior commission decided not to take it up.
Right.
There's no compelling reason at that time to pursue it. There was a lot that was going onto the ballot. I think there were 5 items on the ballot. So they just felt that, there wasn't a compelling reason to consider it at that time, but that it was obviously appropriate for the next commission, as we are doing now, to consider it.
But
So,
Kathleen, you did put it in into the audit committee section, right? Term limits.
yeah, so exactly. And so, as an appointed committee, the first time, and you heard this from former selectman, for selectman Kevin Moynihan, when we drafted the ordinance for the audit committee, we considered should there be term limits, knowing that this was the only appointed committee that would have them. Should we introduce that? So that was discussed as part of the public hearing, et cetera, as we went through and passed that ordinance, and then subsequently added it to the charter. The thinking there was we don't have that anywhere else. Should this be a test case? And given that, when you think about audits at a say corporate level, generally it's the partner who shifts every 6 years or whatever the number is. You know better than I, Bill. But and so we thought, well, that would be a good reason potentially to consider term
Yeah.
limits. So
Yeah.
that was done 10 years ago with the thinking of let's evaluate it now. Did it work? Didn't it work? And then and whatever we decide, I would suggest let's make them consistent.
Yeah. No, I think listening to the research, thinking about it, and listening to many of the presenters who've, been in their positions forever, and knowing that we had a treasurer who was in the position for like before the current treasurer. He was there for I don't know, 30 years or something.
40, yeah.
Woody, and didn't sign the checks, just gave somebody a signature block, never looked at the controls. And so, I mean, I think it just defies logic how well, at least I guess I'm articulating my position on this, but there should be some term limits, Now, if, in fact, I believe that, in business as well, unless you're a founder. I mean, if you're a founder, you're a founder. It's your company. I would say that would be an exception. And we don't have any founders in town, so they're all deceased at this point. So I'm kind of leaning, you know, towards term limits. Then the question is, what's the term? Is it,
Well, can I just ask you
yeah.
for clarification? Are you talking about, let's be, elected versus appointed, a body, i.e. a commission, board or commission, or an individual elected person?
I think I think it's really, I mean, that's a good question. I probably, I think I'm not sure on the, I guess I would say everybody if it was legal, okay.
Yeah.
It would seem to me, including appointed officials, I mean elected officials, excuse me. And but if it wasn't elected officials, if you had to exclude them, then I would just say all appointed, sort of like the audit committee. I mean, I was on the audit committee. I timed out. I just thought it was the right answer. Um,
I think what's interesting, Bill, what you're saying too, is I think term limits for elected, you can term limit by an election someone out, right? Oh, uh, someone's joined us.
Go 3, 5, 6
Yes,
months.
I'll mute. Okay.
Let's just can we just ask who they are?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
curious.
Hello? Could you 203-7170, could you please identify yourself?
So I think, did you put them on mute, Jennifer?
No,
Oh.
they just took themselves off you.
Okay, we'll just carry on. We don't have to ask them.
Okay, very good. So I'm sorry, back to that thought. So couldn't one argue that basically term limits for an elected person could be a term limit because you could basically end their term as well?
yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's 100% right. Yeah.
So if we were looking to at least contemplate term limits, we could contemplate term limits on appointed at a minimum,
Right.
is what you're saying.
Right. Yes, that's all. Right.
Yep.
I would agree with that.
And do you and Russ and team, do you all have some sort of, would it be 2 terms, 3 terms? Would it be based upon essentially a certain criteria to term them?
Or just are all commissions and is everything the 2-year term, so to speak? I mean,
No.
it's different, right? Yeah.
Yes.
They're different, and I think it's a balance, right? Because we've heard across everybody we've spoken to thus far who's been in a position that a board, a committee, whatever it might be, that it's difficult to find people with the right talents or that are willing to give voluntarily of their time to do it. Um, and it also takes time to learn whether you're fire commission, police commission, all the nuances of it. But on the flip side, I totally get what you're saying, Bill, which is that you don't want someone to be there for 30 years, and because they're in a commission or appointed position, there isn't necessarily a mechanism to remove them unless the board of selectmen or group decides to do so. But it's a balance. You don't want to punt people out who are doing a great job and also have incredible skill set for what they're doing and have learned the nuances of their particular role.
Well, it's I agree you don't want to push people out. And everybody we heard when we say everybody, the survey suggests that we ought to be more aggressive in terms of electing people. And there were a number of people we heard from. Most of the people we heard from are people who were in those appointed positions. But if you're not if you're an appointed person, sort of not working in that on a daily basis in that specialty, how do you renew your thought process? How do you stay current? How do you get other experiences to bring to the town? So having somebody on a commission that's there for, 15 or committee 15, 20 years or 10 years, and you really wonder. I mean, they might be a nice person. They might be reading the material and voting the way you want them to vote. But how are they bringing fresh ideas to the town? That's the concern I have. Is that
And I don't know if it's possible, but could you also say that they can only do so many concurrent terms? So that to say that you could do 2 rounds and you got to take a 3-year break or whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah,
If they're that valued, you can bring them back.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's what I found actually when I was doing the research on the planning and zoning teams that are in elected towns. I looked at sort of their credentials and who they were and how they basically, and I saw especially in some towns, I would say Westport in particular, that the current, I believe, some of the people or one of them, gentleman who is the chairman today, actually had gone off and had served for 2 terms and then come back. He went to wetlands, and then he came back and was allowed to serve back again at planning and zoning. So
Yeah.
I concur with you. I agree that potentially there is a concurrency limit. You can go off and lend your credentials and skills at other places, and then if you wanted to come back, serve another 2 and go and come back and serve another 2. Yeah.
Right. Plus, it also gets more people from the town involved, right? I mean, it's we're becoming a bigger town. So I don't know how many, but if let's say we had 40 or 50 appointed positions across all of the commissions and everything, that was fine when we were a town of 14,000 people. Now we're a town of 20,000 people going up. We need to bring more people in, get more people involved.
Kathleen, you had your hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just there's precedent for this actually. So Laszlo Papp, one of the most longest serving appointed commissioners on P&Z, actually, I just learned this from Sarah Carey that he actually served in the 1970s first, and then rolled off and maybe did other things or was occupied with other things and then came back on. So that we do actually have precedent where people can go off, they can come back on, and so forth. I will also add, and I'll just specifically focus on P&Z here because it's like we can kind of talk about the same topic and kind of look at each position or each commission. Interesting, if you had some thoughts about how long a consecutive term might be, um, consider the fact that the POCD is done every 10 years.
Right.
And recall that there is some value in having some folks that have actually seen it 10 years ago. And maybe I hold one of those benefits, or if maybe not a benefit, but when you think about the Charter Revision Commission, that there's some sort of consistency, and that I forget what Chairman Bradman had said in terms of the average tenure in the PNC. Does anybody recall what that was? I think it's in his notes, but I think that, maybe it was like 8 to 12 years, something like that. So there were a number of people that at least held that sort of institutional knowledge of what it was like at the POCD 10 years ago and what it is now and what are some of the effective changes and so forth. So sort of given that interesting data point, I think, and just using P&Z as an example, and their terms, if I got this right, how many years is there?
3.
3. If it were 12 or 15, that would probably then in some cases there would be some folks that would have seen the POCD if they stayed that long, and that would be something that would be a benefit, I think, to the town to have that sort of institutional knowledge. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think I might counter that a bit. I think that's also too the role of the planner. So we can't forget too that we have staff,
What? I'm sorry. Can you just repeat? That's the role of the what? Planner?
the town
Oh,
planner.
assuming they're there 15 years. Yeah.
We had a bit of a turnover at times for a period, but now we
Yeah.
seem to have stability again in terms of consistency. So I would argue too that there is a role, and we can't forget about the role of the staff who are also really there to be a large part of the institutional knowledge of what goes on. And echoing, oh, sorry, you're on mute. Echoing Bill's point, there's not, I think personally 12 years would be a long time. I think the role of the planner too is sort of she or he becomes the keeper of, let's say, the North Star or the POCD or whatever document is there for that committee or commission. So I think personally, I would think 12 years is too long
Yeah.
for something like that, because I would also expect the role of staff to also be in part to basically maintain that knowledge.
Well,
Yeah.
If
I
you don't
don't
want to
disagree.
say,
I don't disagree, but I do think that it's not just, I wouldn't exclusively say that's the role of the town planner because they can take turn over
Yep.
as well. So I think you need the balance of both the governance piece as well as the operational piece.
Kathleen, when you said 12 or 15, I thought you were, rather than making a suggestion, maybe you were, but making a point, which was when you look at the years of tenure, it has to be enough to really bridge that 10-year plan.
as an
So
example, yes.
yeah. So maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's a series of sixes or something, or maybe you stagger them or something. But what you don't want to do is have the entire commission go leave the day you're issued, 2 weeks, a year.
No, 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 you have to stagger,
Yeah,
and they are staggered.
yeah,
They are
yeah,
staggered.
The
yeah,
appointments are staggered.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Another,
agreed.
another consideration, and I guess potential benefit, if someone were to move between commissions and other roles, is the fact that you're broadening their knowledge of town operations across multiple domains, which is beneficial across the board, right? So that's a big bonus as well because there's a lot that happens that a lot of folks don't know or don't know the nuances of the mechanics of how things work. And Kathleen, I know you know this acutely, having been a select person. So that's another benefit to maybe making people have to bounce between them.
Yep, I would agree, Russ. I think that's a good point. And also gives them exposure maybe to other areas where there's intersect. So for instance, wetlands intersects very heavily with planning and zoning. There's a
Right.
balance there when a project goes on, if it's in the wetlands. Those types of intersections basically could be a benefit to another committee, just like that gentleman in Westport went to wetlands. I'm sure there's to your point, a natural reason why. Yeah, because of planning and zoning.
So let me take it one further because we're kind of talking about P and Z, but we can go to the others as well. If it was whatever the number is, I'm just hypothetically say, let's say it's no more than 5 terms because we said they have a 3-year term. Hypothetically, what do we think about those who are actually, and I don't even know if that exists, those who are actually in the seat right now and they're at 16 years or 17 years. I don't know if that exists. I would propose that we would consider, as we go through this in a more thoughtful, deeper way, that there'd be some sort of grandfathering, or they'd finish their existing term, whatever they might be. They might be in year 1, 2, or 3, and then since they have crossed that threshold already, whatever that threshold might be, they would roll off. And Russ, to your point, how long is that sort of period of where they before they are welcomed back? Is it a year? Is it a full term? Your thoughts on that?
I don't mind going first. I guess I'd say if a little bit would depend on what we agree on to be the term limits, right?
Right.
But I wouldn't want the person to have to leave the day this gets adopted, right? I mean,
No.
let's
I
try
don't
to minimum finish out
good.
their term. Um, I might even be more liberal in that if we went from use 5 terms as an example. Let's say if we went to 2 terms, I might be much more liberal in that and just say, everybody's grandfather and you start the clock now, right? I mean, so that'd be one. And then the time off, I don't think a year makes sense. I think a year is just too short. I might go to 1 term, assuming the term isn't 1 year. 2 or 3 years just seems to make sense. I'm not sure what 1 year accomplishes.
And I'm not an attorney, and nor do I ever pretend to be one, but I think 2.7 actually covers this, that when the effective date of the charter goes, whoever's in finishes out their term until
Yeah.
that's done.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Great. So I think we have a couple of next steps here. Right, Kathleen? We need to get just an opinion back from the lawyers. Is that the case?
Yes, yes, thank you, Jen. So Nick Belmonte is going to be obviously, and you saw that on the agenda. He's going to be giving us an update on a number of different questions that we have to our council, and one of them will be on term limits. So, yeah.
So if I may make a suggestion, if we want to put it together, post this conversation, a series of questions to ask him as part of that dialogue, I'm happy to circulate something to
Sure.
put were some questions such as some of the questions Bill, Russ, Kathleen, you asked, and then we can actually have a more pointed conversation with him at the review commission.
Do you
So-
think we can get
Does
that
he think it's
today or
legal?
tomorrow, Jen? Sorry, Russ.
No, I was saying, starting with, does he think it's legal, given that we have a couple of differing
Right.
opinions on that? So
Right. That may, as you say, that may knock the whole thing out or may not. But knowing how sort of amorphous or inconclusive this is, unless there's been some case law that we don't know about, right? That probably is the knocker out. But yeah, if we can get those questions by tomorrow together, we can basically send them out to Kathleen to get them then on point.
Yeah, you know, I think I hadn't focused on Nick coming forward, but you know, I think not knowing what his research is, so I'm really not sure we want his opinion, right? I mean, we want to know what we want to know what the law is. We want to know
Law
what his opinion
says.
on the
Yeah.
law is, you know. But going back to um, this is the in-house legal firm, which we all debated on the front end. You know, I don't think we want his in-house. We don't want his in-house opinion. We don't know what the law is.
Yep.
You know, I think we should be. I don't want to have to. I don't want to have to raise my hand again and say that. You know, because I have them on tape on my phone. So, but
Bill,
go ahead, Kat.
I want to I agree. We want their legal opinion. That's what we're paying them for. But I also respect people's opinion and that of our law firm. So I'm a good judge of deciding, you know, what the opinion is and what the legal reference is. And I'm perfectly fine to hear their opinion. And I'll ask for it though, with you know, I don't think they're going to, based on the conversation we had with them in an early meeting, I don't think they're going to volunteer without it being
Well,
asked.
but Kathleen,
I'll ask.
you know, you and I had, I
Yeah.
think one of the concerns I have is, you know, so a lot of times people think things that are in the newspaper are correct because they're in the newspaper or on television are correct or on a Zoom call because they're correct. And while I'm totally confident you can sort through the weeds, you know, I don't know how many people are going to be on the call.
Yeah,
So,
but we hired them. I want their opinion. And if I hired an accountant, if I hired a
yeah,
lawyer,
no, I
I want to know
understand.
their opinion. And
I
that's what I
understand.
tend to ask for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So,
I'll echo Kathleen's point on this. Every interaction and every time I work with them, I've always found their opinion to be very valuable to us.
Yeah, I'd like to
And
know
if
the
I didn't
case
want
law.
it, I wouldn't ask for it.
okay,
Right.
Yep, I'd
fine.
like to know the case law to Bill's point. So,
Totally
that's
agree.
one of the questions it's going to be. And if you could cite the cases in advance, I'm happy to read the
Yep.
cases.
Yeah, why don't we keep Kathleen? Could we at least let go through all of the case law and everything and
Yeah.
Absolutely.
understand it?
Absolutely.
And then if we want to ask him his opinion,
I will
that'd
be
be
asking
fine.
his
Yeah,
opinion,
I
but
would.
yes.
Yeah,
But yes, have focus on the case law first.
I guess if
Absolutely.
I
Yep.
knew that was the case, I would have in fact voted the other way.
Yep,
Because
that's fine.
you're going to get, look, he's unlike an independent accounting firm, you're going to get the in-house answer.
That's fine.
Okay,
That's
super.
fine.
All right. So, great next steps on that one. Perfect. What I will do now, hopefully with no technical issues, is I'm going to share Article 2.
Yes.
And we can start to go through that. I think just to set expectations. Obviously, we may not come to all the edits, conclusions. Obviously, some of us may want to take some things away. We can put this on the next agenda. Just for awareness, I have deliberately not posted that agenda yet to see how this meeting went, if there was carryover. You know, some of these articles are quite lengthy. And just for awareness too, in terms of how I laid out the articles for the future agendas, I also, acknowledge Article 5, Board of Finance is quite large. So what I would like to do is tackle that later, potentially after we've gotten input from the Board of Finance, which we've asked for, to make it a little faster and easier. But if you are so inclined to start going through the articles that we've been assigned, I'm happy to send them because I have excerpt all of them out of the charter into Word to you, and you're welcome, even if we're not going in that order, to send your comments back and I can aggregate them. Okay?
Do
Hi,
you,
Russ. I
Jennifer,
think you're. Oh, hold on. Russ, you're in double time, my friend.
that's okay.
Yes, that's so I can get it on the screen.
Okay, good. Very good. Sorry. Go ahead.
Jennifer, just a question. So do you have all the articles in Word? Like all
All
12,
the
all
articles that are
23?
assigned to us.
Okay, got it. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Jennifer,
Um,
if you could send them, Jennifer, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Shall
Yeah.
do.
so we have 2 and 5 right now. Is that right?
2 and 5 is what we're doing. Well,
Yeah.
we're doing 2 and a portion
Part of
of
5. Yeah.
5. I,
Right.
yep.
If you
So
can send us them all, that'd be awesome.
happily, yep.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
Let
Thank you
me,
so much. And let me just comment on the Board of Finance, because I agree with your timeline, Jen. I did speak to, well, 3 members of the Board of Finance, including the chair, and he said that he's going to send me a date and time that works for him next week. He's going to be in town hall next week because they're starting the budget process. So obviously, if I can kind of steer them and to the Thursday meeting that we have, that would be ideal. Otherwise, we might have to do a small meeting with him at another time that suits him, but I haven't heard back what day or time works.
very good. Okay. Excellent. So, can everyone see Article 2? Is this enough, the right size for everyone? Good?
Yeah.
All right. So just so you know, awareness, when it's highlighted, it's my comments. This is where you can click on the comments when you get the document. I did send this out in advance. So, why don't we start from the top? Town officers. Um, I just would say, and here I can see if I can make this a little, no, it doesn't want to go larger. Um, I felt that this first sentence was a little muddled. Um, it should clearly define, I think, a little bit better what's elected and who, because if you noticed, then together with the assessor tax collector with the comma, those are actually many of those people are appointed and commissions and committees. So I had suggested in the comment there should either be a semicolon or a period that the town officers shall be 3 selectmen, a treasurer, 2 registers of voters, town clerk, and the 12 members of town council. And then essentially I also made a suggestion that then we add different language follow on to basically say to the appointed commissions that go towards the election. I don't know how others felt about that. So that would be my first comment. Yep. Kathleen?
So great minds think
Good.
alike, and it's not my mind, but Joe Palo also raised the same question
Yep.
as you may have heard, Jen. And it actually, this sentence dates back to 1935. So there's a reason that it's time for maybe some refreshing of it. And I will say that the sentence is correct, but with some exceptions. That it's really referencing sort of 2 categories. One is all of the elected individuals and commissions, and everybody else, without saying that they're appointed. It's just separating.
Yep.
However, there's one exception to that, and that is it doesn't reference the Board of Education as an elected body, and so should we put them there in terms of town officers? Possibly, I would. Why not? And then it basically the comma, and then together with the assessor and everybody else, and that's just saying you're also town officers. This is really about the town officers rather than who's elected, who's appointed. Is that everybody? It's a broad brush of everybody who is a town officer. And the other incorrect, if you take it one step further, the 12 members of the town council, all who shall be elected at the biennial town elections. And as Joe Pello has pointed out, well, no, it's really
Yep.
only 6, right, that are elected at the biennial. But these are introductions to what the deeper description would be. In the case of town council, has its own article, and of course then it does describe that only 6 come up every 2 years. So I agree with you wholeheartedly that we can clarify this and make it work. I guess I want to also acknowledge that the town officer title, and that's really important, right? And so when everybody's included, including the committees of the town, which is the next sentence. I just want to clarify that everybody, and this is again, Joe Palo had asked, well, there's a committee that the TDAC committee, for instance, that has people that are not members, are not electors. And would you consider them to be a town officer? So I think that might require maybe a legal comment here. I don't know, unless you think we can interpret this ourselves, but I'll leave it to further
I
comment.
think your suggestion's a good, very good suggestion. I think, the Board of Finance, the Board of Education, I think,
Should, should be
I,
included.
th- I really should be there. I mean, I can't believe it's not there, you know.
Yeah,
And now I
yeah.
can understand a little bit, at least my view, I can understand a little bit why um, people are concerned about how separate things are, right? I mean, it's even it would be interesting to look at the history. Was this ever in here? I would, generally speaking, go along with your suggestions.
Great.
Jennifer's suggestion. Yeah,
Yeah, I think there's a nice, I think we all agree there's got to be some cleanup on this one.
yeah.
And that we need to take some pen to that. Okay, so that's great. The next section here, I thought this was interesting in the sense that they th this calls out specifically the treasurer. Um, I was found it sort of odd as to why felt like an orphan to me, for lack of a better word.
I can describe that. I can explain the history to that.
Okay.
So that was a sentence that was added in the last charter revision. And I'll use your word, orphan, because not having it made it seem like the treasurer is somewhat orphaned and that it wasn't clear exactly roles and responsibilities and so forth. And so the commission wanted to specify and align it with the general statutes. And so this line, I think, comes up right out. And so that's why it was put there under the paragraph of town officers, because we didn't take it one step further and put a section in about town treasurer. Not to say that it's not worthy of doing that now, but that's why it's there where it is.
It
So that was
does.
my suggestion. We need to make a section for the town treasurer, and this could go in there. Sorry, Russ. Apologies.
No, I was just saying this mirrors the language in Connecticut General Statutes, Chapter 94, Section 780, which specifically talks about the duties of a treasurer and everything else, which is held one level up at the state level. So,
Yep, as does like town clerks do the same
right.
thing. I just thought that this maybe if we had a town treasurer section that was a little more robust, this would fit very well in that section. And of course, they're cited above as an officer. So that is sort of covered as to their status or stature. But I felt that we needed, like, as I said, this seems to be put in there. Now it probably could find a better home, in my viewpoint, or a new home, for lack of a better word.
I think you're right about that. And I also would say that whether the town treasurer as a separate section or its own article, the that would be whether or not this commission decides to go forward with whether or not they will remain elected or appointed. Because that's still, I mean, I think the position still exists and under state statutes, it's recognized that that's a role for an individual in town government. So we'll take that up, but maybe on another time. But I would say, and I want to change the time that Andrew's currently scheduled to meet with us, which is not until March. I want to get that up to February 17th. So we'll get him on the schedule for
So,
that.
Kathleen, you're saying, if I understand, you said irrespective of whether the treasurer is elected or appointed,
Yeah,
we should have something in here. It should be
yeah,
robust, maybe more
yeah,
robust, and
Mhm.
yeah,
it's
Yeah.
okay to have it separate.
yeah.
Yeah, I would, that's fine.
I'm proposing we make a new article, and this
Yeah,
goes into that new article and comes out of this section.
right.
And even if he's appointed or she's appointed or elected, this becomes part of that. I will note too, one thing in doing some research, I found that not all towns have their own treasurer, which you can take that up another time. Sometimes it is also the finance director who is serving as the role to satisfy the state statute of treasurer. Just as an
Correct.
FYI. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Super. Great discussion. Um, I don't believe I had anyone have any comments on sections 2.2-2, C2-2?
Nope.
Two, no.
Bill?
Nope, nope, nope. I'll chime in when I
Okay.
do.
2-3?
I just had one comment, and we can
Okay.
think about this in on minority representation. This will come up later, perhaps in other conversations. That um, in terms of representation on boards, commissions, committees, etc., a question has come up actually on group one, and you can watch this. It was last night. The question becomes, how do we ensure that people in our town who know about openings can apply just the same way we all apply to be considered to serve on the Charter Revision Commission, apply and be voted on by either the Board of Selectmen, or in the case of audit committee, it would also include the town council. So it'd be very specific, but that the process would mirror one that was maybe even covered under an ordinance. That maybe doesn't have to be in the charter, but also enabled a situation where instead of just following minority representation in General Statute 9-167A, that would go a step further and do a no more than a bare majority, could be any one political party. So an example of that would be, and a number of different towns have the bare majority rule, which is basically just lowering the ceiling. So right now, if you've got a 5-member board, let's say, just as an example, under state statutes 9-167A, 4 individuals out of 5 can represent one political party. Doesn't matter whether it's Democrats or Republicans, no more than 4. If you impose a no more than the bare uh, majority, then no more than 3 of that 5-member body. And I think Wilton has that. That I think Wilton and others towns I am aware have no more than the bare majority. And so, and I'll just take it one step further on a 7-member. Right now, under the general statutes, it's 5 and 2, and that would go to 4 and 3, and so forth and so on. So it's just lowering the ceiling a bit. So potentially opening up the opportunity for more individuals who are unaffiliated to fill some of those roles. So that's a suggestion coming out of group one. Further research is being done in that area, but I just wanted to share it with you. And if we as a commission decided, that's something that we'd like to consider, it would be picked up here under C2-3 and the individual descriptions of each board and commission. So it's like a belt and suspender.
So just a couple of thoughts. On this minority representation question, I was wondering if the legality of that today, given the federal statutes on DEI, right? Diversity, equality, and inclusion. A lot in the corporate world, a lot of people have moved away from that. I'm not trying to get on whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, but can we have something like this in here? I mean, I assume Nick will focus on that in any event. It's probably something he's addressed before. And I don't care what the answer is, but we should check to make sure it's okay.
Well, minority representation is definitely okay in terms of following the general statutes, and that's in every town charter.
Is it in every charter?
Absolutely.
Well, I mean,
It's
No
state
question.
law. You have to do it. It's
State
state
law.
law. It supersedes our charter.
pardon me?
It's state law. It supersedes our charter. You have to.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying is that I haven't really traced through. I'm not a lawyer, and I haven't traced through the lineage of but I do know at the federal level, corporations no longer talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It might have been an executive order or something. So, but we can just ask.
Minority representation has been around since the dawn of time in government, especially in the state of Connecticut. So
So, as minority representation means party representation?
it
Yes.
means that no one party can exceed, and in this
Oh.
particular case, there's a very specific guidance: 5 members, no more than four.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
Yeah,
I guess I read minority incorrectly.
you did.
Yes, you did. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
I,
And why would we, so going to your point, Kathleen, then, should we, this may become a more robust discussion where we wind up on some of the other issues here, but why would we not include independence in
Well,
the
independence is,
Republican?
as you know, independence is a party. Unaffiliated is not a party. And under general state statutes, they're referring to political parties when they talk
Parties?
about minority representation. Unaffiliates are not a party.
Okay.
however, unaffiliated makes up the majority of our constituency in New Canaan is an interesting point of fact, I believe.
Precisely. And that way, by lowering this bar, if you will, or the ceiling, it opens up the opportunity for unaffiliates to actually serve.
Right.
Because
Well, I guess
it's
I
not
missed
all
that.
one party in a 5 member commission that you have 4 in one party, leaving just an empty seat for either the opposite party or an unaffiliate. This way, it would be no more than 3. Therefore, there's, and again, any one party, it doesn't matter, it's not Republican, Democrats, any one party, leaving 2 seats for the opposing party, if there is an opposition, and unaffiliated.
So I
Or it
guess
could be 2 unaffiliated.
I'm a novice in this area, so I guess
I know.
if you ran
That's why we're educating you.
if you ran as a Republican or Democrat, and you also could you could probably run on the independent line as well.
Independent is a party in the state of Connecticut.
So, but I'm saying you could
Unaffiliated.
run on both lines, could you not?
It would be up to the parties. I don't know, but I think that's
I think
beyond
you
what we're
probably
talking
could.
about here in the charter. We're not talking about how people run different
But
parties. But
Kathleen,
Well,
I think you bring up a good, sorry, go ahead.
no, I just wondering how we can get more of the, more, I'm wondering how we can get more representation of the
yeah,
thinking of the people in the town. And,
yeah,
uh, and I'm not, you may, what you suggested may in fact be the answer. I
is
just don't
one
see, I
step.
just don't
One
see.
step
Yeah.
is one step. The other steps are process steps. How to encourage people to apply for open positions, et cetera, and that can be a recommendation. I don't see it as a charter change, but
Right. And I think that's an incredibly important point, Kathleen. And yes, I don't want to belabor this conversation with it, but what is the mechanism by process, or should it be captured in the charter itself to ensure that someone who is an unaffiliated or minority party can be heard or is forced to be at least reviewed or processed to be given an opportunity as opposed to just kind of pushed away and never looked at. You know what I mean?
I would argue that that starts first with an ordinance, and you'll hear whenever we have something missing in the charter, let's ask, is there an ordinance that exists first?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
that's
that makes
kind of the step process. Yeah.
Could you
Makes sense.
could you explain that point, Kathleen, on the ordinance? It starts first with an ordinance because if you're gonna, why can't we just do it? Just what, I just don't know.
Yeah. So an ordinance actually is, and by the way, the audit committee was first established via an ordinance, went through the process, had a public hearing specifically on that. There have been changes even in the last 10 years that about the ordinance, about the audit committee and the ethics board and others. In ordinances, you can go in and change, obviously going through public hearings and votes and so forth. In charter, once you set something up, you can't change it for another 10 years unless you open up the entire charter. So the
So,
step function is always more appropriate to go through an ordinance process, okay, where there's debate about that specific issue. Remember, the charter, we're talking about the entire charter here. We can't really introduce something new, if you will, without having the proper vetting, et cetera, and the public hearings and so forth. We're talking about the whole charter. I'd rather see, if it doesn't exist, start first with an ordinance,
okay,
and
but
so that it can be,
Right.
modified if needed over the course of time. And then once it's been seasoned, if you will, and the next charter commission meeting comes and they say, oh, gee, this is a great ordinance, great practice. Let's embody it in the charter. Great. It doesn't exist now as an ordinance. So I wouldn't suggest it goes into the charter today. 10 years from now, might be another situation somebody else can consider.
So if we as a committee felt unanimous and strong on a particular point, whatever that point might be,
Yeah.
if we recommended to go, or we at least note that this should go through an ordinance process,
Yes.
we have no control whether it does or it doesn't. The town council could do it or not do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a recommendation. This report is a recommendation to the
Right.
town
Okay.
council.
Got
Okay.
it. Okay.
We're
Ross,
just
you have
doing a
something?
report to. No, I was going to give an example of what possibly in this charter review commission would have gone exactly that process that Kathleen outlined, which is the EMS commission is currently a ordinance, but probably is something that should move up, right? It's been there, it's been vetted, it's a service that's provided to town. They spend, so I'm using that as an example of one of those things that started down at an ordinance level and might move up. We'll see.
Similar to the Historical Review Commission, too.
Bingo. Yep, exactly.
It has to
Yeah.
first go through that process before it becomes sort
I
of
just,
codified in charter land.
Yeah, I just it's just me. It's towns move in decades, and the world's moving and the world is moving at warp speed. And I you know,
I hear you, Bill.
I got it.
You and
got
I are
it.
used to like tomorrow morning we do this.
We have a committee for. We think it's a good idea. Okay,
Yeah.
let's make Kathleen chair. Let's go forward and get it done.
So I
It's
just
been
want to
10 years.
revisit your comment on bare majority. So
Yeah.
let me just revisit the thinking. So bare majority being at least that there's a minimum of 50% of one party, right?
Right.
As
Right.
opposed to a minority representation. Your thinking there is that then that could enable unaffiliated and independents to also be imparted and would open that door to support that sort of activity.
Open
So
season.
just to sort of so as opposed to a super majority, which we all are very aware of due to the federal level, a 5-member convention, there would be needly 3 of one
It
party.
doesn't need to be. It's that it should be no more than.
Yeah, it has to be a bare majority of 3 to
Mhm.
basically be successful.
It
in terms
doesn't
of
have to
meeting-
be. It doesn't have to. It should be no more than. It's a ceiling rather than a fulfilling.
And could there be, let's say, 3 unaffiliated?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Just
But
wanna
it's-
be sure I
They're not a
understand the
party.
concept right.
They're not a party. So absolutely.
Right, so
But
we
it's
just
not a guarantee that would happen. Let's just make that
No,
clear.
no, no,
It's not a
no, no.
No,
guarantee.
I understand.
The
I'm
Democratic Party could put all of their people in and fill all those slots, but by increasing the number of available slots, you increase the possibility that it could become someone who is unaffiliated.
Yes.
correct.
But it's not a guarantee because you're not enshrining that they have to be there.
No, I'm just trying to understand what is an unaffiliated allowed to be then part of the majority, which it sounds like it is. Could be the majority count, what I'm saying. Okay, I just want to understand the concept a little better.
Here's another, just take it one step further. I'll pick the number 7. Okay. So right now it can be 5, up to 5 of one party. Okay.
Mhm.
And then there's 2 of anybody else. It could be the other party, could be unaffiliated, whatever. How the practice has been, I'm just saying, how I've seen the practice is that, let's just say those 5 people happen to be Republicans. And one steps off, finishes their term, what have you. In the past, it's been considered as the Republican seat, and that it can only be filled by a Republican.
Right.
And under this, that's not the case. Under minority representation, you can fill that with anybody.
Right.
It's just that nobody, but so the way this operates is that they say, well, a Republican left, a Republican has got to fill that seat. That's not really the way it works. That's how it's been operated on. It's fine. But one way to kind of mitigate that, if you will, and so that there isn't one set of concentration, especially when you have unaffiliates representing the greater portion of the entire town, then you have an opportunity to say, okay, that 7 members really should only be the bare maximum is up to 4.
Right.
So, and they don't have to be all 4. It doesn't have to be the same party. It can't be more than 4.
And
Is
Kathleen, you used
the bare
taking your
minimum.
example one step further, that Republican who leaves, typically the process is that there's lots of people that can provide input, but the first selectman makes the final decision on the appointment?
No, it is the Board of Selectmen. In some cases, the town council is also involved.
Yeah.
Example,
Right.
audit committee, and Board of Finance. And however, and so that's appropriate. It is the full Board of Selectmen that should, vet this, interview the candidate, etc. However, and this, I'm not picking on the current first selectman, but if this is what has been the tradition is an applicant or the DTC or the RTC or an unaffiliated person will go to the first selectman and say, I'm interested in the position. That person, the first select person, can say, well, interesting, I don't think you're going to fit, and never take it to the Board of Selectmen.
Right.
So there is a potential block by the first selectman. Again, that's just the way it's been. I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but one recommendation may be from this body to the town council. Look at this, the town of Fairfield. Look how they have their application program. They put publicly announce there's a spot on the audit committee. These are the credentials we're looking for. Please apply here by February 8th. And therefore, the full body, in this case, it would be the Board of Selectmen and the town council, have an opportunity to see all of the potential candidates who have raised their hands, their qualifications, interview, and then make a decision going forward, rather than the current practice now. It's just a suggestion.
No, my 2 cents, I'm the strongest supporter in the world of that, because to your point, not saying it's the current administration or other, it's been precedent that it can stop right there. The person can never get past that point.
It'd be
I'm going to
interesting.
step off the phone for 5 minutes. I just got to take my dog for a walk.
No problem, Bill. It'd be interesting to see if there's any language in the Fairfield Charter. That's not a charter I've
I don't
read.
know. That's a good question. Yeah, but you can see it on their website. I'd love to hear from them too, if we can.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is it ordinance? Is it charter? Is it just a process that they have enacted? That's actually a very good point.
Yeah.
Hmm. Let's see if that exists in the charter at all. Okay. Let's take that as a takeaway. All right, gang, we're going along here. This is all good secession. Maybe we
It
need
is.
to have some more meetings. We'll figure that out. All right. C24. Now, I made one comment here. Members of appointed committees need not be electors or residents of the town. I think I think this becomes a little confusing. I would either say we take it out, because if you go into the subsections of each of them, the committees or the commissions, it does actually state very clearly what those people have to be part of that committee. Or we take those out and we make a blanket statement that everyone needs to be an elector or resident. Yeah, so I think this actually goes back to sort of the top point where it sort of at times conflicts and makes it confusing with my point.
Your point is dead on, because it actually directly conflicts with C5.26. So it
Exactly.
directly conflicts with the one section there. So
Yeah.
So let's look at the title again. What's this paragraph supposed to be about? And this is supposed to be about certain town
Yep.
officers are required to be electors, right? But it then qualifies that members of appointed committees, so they're not talking about commissions, boards, elected officers, appointed officers. They're only talking about committees. And those committees need not be electors or residents of the town. This is the TDAC clause. Okay.
Oh, this was put in
Audit
for TDAC?
committee,
Or others, but this is where TDAC is an appointed committee, and they don't the people that serve on that committee do not need to be electors or residents of town. So this brings up a great question. Okay, well, is there a committee, any committee in town where there is somebody who's not neither elector nor a resident? Are they still considered an officer? Do we want them to be?
No, sorry. That was a little quick.
and regardless of the language here is just, it should, if this remains as it is for TDAC, so that it remains appropriate, that people can be out of town, is finding a way or adding language to make sure that it doesn't, because the audit committee is a committee, but it specifically said they have to be electors in a subsection.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's where the conflicts start. Yeah.
Well, it just says need not be. It offers the opportunity, but it's very
That's true.
specific language when you get down to the specific committee. And I will point out that group one is going to make a recommendation that the audit committees change to audit board, which I'd be supportive of. And so there'd be none of this sort of confusion about committees.
Yeah, that resolves it right there if that occurs. So
Yeah.
Okay, so should we
I would still highlight it. Let's bring it up, but
okay.
I think it's going to be resolved in a matter of making changes where, as Russ pointed out in the audit committee, calling it the audit board.
Got it. Okay. And when Bill
It still
returns,
doesn't address, though, forgive me for interrupting, it still doesn't address the question about would a member of the town committee, in the case of TDAC, which is not in the charter, but this is an example, are they all considered town officers if they don't reside here in New Canaan? That's the question.
right.
Still an open item.
And
No.
could we maybe perhaps actually in the end separate this out to call out that and say unless specified in the charter? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Unless specified under further committees. However, in this committee, most committees don't make it to the charter,
Right.
except the audit committee, and that's only because it's the branding, if you will, of it. But most committees don't make it to the charter, and the question becomes, do we still stand by that they don't need to be electors? And I'm comfortable with this, that how the TDAC was arranged, and understand that a number of the committee members are, business people who operate in town and so forth, but they don't live here, and I have no problem with that. The question I do have is, are they functionally town officers? And I don't know the answer.
Kathleen, I think you bring up an interesting point, because what is town officer? What is it accomplishing? So it's not under general provisions as a defined term, which to start is interesting in and of itself. But basically everything in Article 2 just says, if to be an officer, you have to have an oath, the continuity of the position and how it would get filled, removal if you don't make meetings, right? All these provisions, and then that they're subject to the code of ethics.
Correct.
So to your point, is that applicable to TDAC in particular?
Yeah.
I don't think that nowhere else did I see anything else that anoints a officer if you make it a defined term, any other special privileges or powers. But then again, I don't know, Kathleen, if on Connecticut general statutes, I don't think that's a term. It says town officer, so I don't think that provides any protections or anything else. I don't know the answer to this, but
Well, Russ, to your point, though, I think I put it in my comment. I think we need to add some things to the defined terms in section 1 that would probably aid in sort of the questions that you're raising. I suggested we add a few more definitions to committee, commission, officer. That would help as the preamble, as you see in the section 1, they have some definitions that would then support basically some of this clarity, right? Officers are defined as in the definition piece. Commissions or committees are defined as. And I think that would help clear that would delineate some of these new nuances. Yes, Kathleen?
Yeah, and Jennifer, I take your point, and I would say that not any of those additional clarifying points cannot change the basic meaning of what the charter says now.
Right,
It's
right, right.
specifically for clarification. Because if you go for, oh, and by the way, this changes the meaning,
No, no, no,
then it
no.
becomes a ballot issue. And I mean, any change requires a ballot agreement. But some of as you look at the previous ballot for the charter revision, the things that were just nuances, cleanup, changing the gender, et cetera, those were just generically put into a category. And this would obviously any changes mostly would be hopefully in a category. But I would just say, yes, I'm all in favor of clarity as long as it doesn't change the meaning.
Right. So in C1-2, there's a great section on definitions in the beginning.
Yeah,
And many times as I read through this document, I would flip to see, well, what's the
right,
difference between a committee and a commission? What's the
right,
difference between a board? What powers does an officer have to this question versus not an officer? Are all
right.
committees not officers? And so as I was going through this, and maybe it's because of legal documents, I see we define selectmen, I see we define town council in that section. And I just thought I think there's an opportunity to not change the meaning, but define the meaning much clearer in the
Yep,
beginning. Yeah.
yep, I agree.
And then I think that would also clear up some ambiguity that people start to have when they read these certain sections. Like I'm going to make it up, all committees are, don't whatever they are, don't have to be electors or town residents. They are basically bodies, da 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 da. Whatever. Yep. And give them essentially define almost not their powers, but what they are in terms of the point that they represent in the charter. Okay. We don't have Bill back. All
That's
right.
okay.
We'll continue on. C2-5. Any questions, any thoughts?
I don't.
None
Russ?
here.
Great.
Nope, none here.
C2-6.
Also none here.
None here. Kathleen?
None. Nope.
C2
I mean, I
hyphen
take
seven.
the, I guess, take the oath of office. Sorry forgive me for interrupting. Um, take the oath of office. Beyond the oath of office is I mean, we have the whole list of all the signatures we have to do, right? And so the oath of office is required. That's again, I always go to what's the title? So no question there. At some point, there are other things that we're asked to sign, the code of ethics that's also referenced elsewhere. But I'm not suggesting, I mean, this sentence is appropriate with its title, so I wouldn't add anything there. But there are other things that each elected or appointed officer must do.
Okay, so you would add a sentence.
No, 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 I'm
Okay.
just pointing it out.
Okay. All right. C2-7. Um, I just thought my one comment here was to be an additional section or comment when someone is no longer a resident or an elector.
Probably. Yep.
Don't you think? Hi, Bill.
But is this language specifically saying at the time the charter changes, these people stay in, or is this a more broad statement? Again, I'm not a lawyer, but the way I read it, it sounds like when the charter changes, they finish out their term.
No, that's not what it intends.
No.
That's not what it intends to say.
I'm glad to hear misreading. That's fine.
No, that's okay. But no,
Don't worry, Russ.
to your
It's
point,
9:30.
to your point, so basically what it says is if you finished up your term, you're an appointed officer, you sit on a board or commission, you finish up your term, you are still you shall continue. It's not like you shall continue to serve in that office, um,
Until they're
uh,
replaced.
Until,
and until the successor shall be appointed or elected, and it shall have qualified.
Got it. And shall is a key word, which means you will. It's not
Shall, you
optional
will.
until
Yep,
such
you're
time
going to
as
do
your
it.
replacement comes. Got it.
Yep,
Got it.
so I
yep.
think we need some clarifying. On my suggestion, we need some clarifying language there to say what if someone's no longer a re resident or an elector, then what the implications are there.
They move out of town.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yep.
yep,
Okay. I think, yeah, put that in your notes.
yep. It's in there now.
Yep.
Bill, anything you want to add? I
I was
know
going to
you're,
ask you, how would you define no longer a resident? Because generally I have a philosophical question in that whole area. I mean, is it the is it the state? Maybe there's a statute somewhere that defines that, in the context of this commission, but residency in the state, fundamentally means if you're paying
on
taxes.
real property.
Well, I think that's
Well, the elector, if it's by elector, it's are you qualified to, by law, to vote in a town election?
So we
And
could change it
so,
to elector.
yeah,
so.
I
What
think
what
that's the key,
I
Kathleen,
guess
you got right there.
who's qualified to vote? Who? I mean, I just
well,
don't
you
know.
can't vote in two different places, basically. So you register to vote. You don't have to have, by the way, you don't have to have, you can be a renter to be a voter. But you're registering to vote in one place. You can't be in Florida and Connecticut. You have to pick one place to vote.
And if you're registered, so you could be a renter, so you don't have to own.
To be a renter, right?
But can you
Kathleen,
be?
company,
Can you?
I got to
Can you?
drop off right quick. They're going over my budget and board of selectmen. I'll be right back.
Thank you,
Sure.
Chris.
You should do that.
All right, I'll be right back.
So, Kathleen, can you be a renter but not pay taxes and not own property and be elected?
Sure.
Yes.
So then you probably couldn't register to vote, I guess, if you don't pay. I mean, I don't know. I don't.
No,
You
you do. You
Yeah.
can register to vote because you're basically declaring your primary residence, let's say, which is
Yes.
the driver for your voting and
Your,
taxation,
your
sort of
income taxes,
your income
essentially.
tax
So you
as
so you
part
so
of
you so you're
your
saying that, so it really goes back to the income tax definition. If you're a resident and therefore you're required to file a tax return, whether you pay taxes or not.
Well, it's interesting because Bill, and I can catch you up offline if you want for a sec, just or you can go back and listen. We were talking about adding some definitions into C1-2. And so when we use the word elector in this context, elector is a resident of the town of New Canaan qualified by law to vote in a town election.
Simple as that. Okay.
Yep,
Simple
as simple
enough.
as that. Yeah. So,
You
so
have to be
I know where you're
18 or
going.
over. You have to be 18 or over, and you've registered to vote. Or this doesn't even say uh, you are a voter. You're not even registered. It says you're qualified to vote.
Right. Maybe not even registered, right? Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I guess should we tighten this up a little bit? Or, I mean, it's probably never been a problem, but I mean,
Again, if it changes I'd be careful about that. But
Well, you know what? Um, Bill, do you want to brainstorm on that and come back?
yeah, that'd be an idea. I think we
Yeah.
do have had people in elected positions who are, well, maybe I'm wrong, but I do think we have had people in elected positions who maybe are resident in other states.
Mm.
they
And
may own property, but it doesn't make them a resident.
that's also true. I guess I was assuming they were a resident, but because I could be wrong. But I never ordered it. I never checked it. I never really asked at that particular point in time. But we can well, let's take a look at the language. Maybe there's a way of leaving it the way it is or tightening it up, and we'd have
Okay.
to discuss it. Yeah. Good.
Okay. Um, C28. So removal from office. So I did a little due diligence on this, and you'll see at the bottom of the document. Now we have a for cause, excuse me, clause. Um, I did look at some other boards when I was obviously analyzing all of their sort of articles in this regard. There was much more process oriented and definitional guidance on cause. So, and if you don't mind, I'm going to whiz along here 2 secs. So, I did look upon removals on some other ones, and I believe, oh, shoots, I didn't write where I got this. One is Ridgefield. I believe the other one might have been Fairfield. I will have to go look. Apologies for that. I'll next time cite the citation better. Um, but it can be appointed or elected may be removed from office by the selectmen upon finding of a good and sufficient cause for such removal after a public hearing before the Board of Selectmen. So what I noticed in my doing the research was there was a lot more, for lack of a word, clarity. And then a lot of them, by the way, I didn't put all of them in here, did have sort of a conviction of a felony, abandonment of office, as opposed to define cause better. Now, I don't think we need to solve this now, but we can have this discussion. But what I did see that there was consistently more definitions in other charters for this section, and
Yeah.
also sort of a process outlined.
Yeah, I would think our town would benefit by having a broader definition. I don't think we need to go as far as convicted of felonies and things of that nature. I think that's self-correcting by itself, right? So, but this idea of going, because it is in fact, I mean, if someone on the commission disagrees and you don't have a process, they can just be taken off. And I don't think that's good either.
So I was similar to you, Bill, sort of like, well, what is cause? You know, I think from my corporate life, you could say there's a lot of can be creative definitions. So that's why I began to do this digging.
Yeah,
And I also didn't notice too that to your point, we had a process. So it's sort of for purposes of litigation, if I remove somebody and they decided to, adjudicate that, um, that it probably leaves us in a weakened position because we could say we followed this process. You had this sort of opportunity, just as they say here, to their to that point to then support whatever removal was required.
right.
So if you don't mind, and if you'll see this, I handed this in your notes to you. This is all at the bottom where I did some other potentially interesting topics for discussion. There was also another interesting thing about resignation. So I'm going to whirl this back here. And this is what our section says. So it doesn't talk truly about a hearing or a timeline. If I,
I think I think we can argue and debate about what the process should be, but should be some process around due process around cause. That's and no one should be afraid of that because if
I think that process already exists, and I think that's in the code of conduct or code of ethics. But
is it? Okay.
I will verify that, and
maybe
we'll take.
Kathleen, it maybe exists, but it's really, I don't want to get into citing examples, but it doesn't happen. Well, it doesn't happen all the time.
Okay, well, if it's this a clarifying thing or adding, let's put it up there as a consideration, and this is for cause issues are something that we can get the thoughts or opinions of legal counsel on this, and I would welcome that.
Yeah, and I highly recommend when going to look at, I've been basically researching off of maybe four charters as sort
Yeah,
of our baseline, just so
Right.
you're aware.
yeah,
Um, as I put down in the bottom of the document, you'll see where some of that research comes. I lifted the language directly on some of these points. Um,
well,
Not
good,
thinking, they might be wrong
yeah,
too. Never
It's terrific.
tested, but
all
at
right,
least it gives us some guidance. Yeah.
good work.
So C28 will continue to review and look at and potentially ask some and Bill, would you come back with some thoughts? Is that okay?
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. Okay. C29, failure to attend meetings. Anyone have any questions or issues?
No,
No.
Okay. C210, let me see. Oh, that, I don't know why that's there. Never mind. Okay. Any questions or issues?
no,
Okay. C211. I didn't have any questions or issues.
mm-mm.
C212, lack of a quorum.
Yeah,
Fine.
Okay. C213.
Nope.
good.
C214. I think Kathleen, this is going to
Yeah,
ordinance part of Code of Ethics you were talking about.
yeah,
Okay. And that ends this section. Yay!
Kathleen, C214, going back to my
yeah.
this is this was written the last time when you were on the committee?
Oh, no, that's been on there for a long, long time. Hold on a sec.
There should be an ordinance establishing or town
There-
code, a town, I'm sorry, I
There's
was
always been a code of ethics. This
I
is
was
not the
reading it
ethics board.
as the ethics board. No, I'm sorry.
No,
I
no,
read that wrong. Yeah, yeah.
no,
Okay.
no. Yeah, good work. Thank you, Jen, for leading us through this. Where we have some open items and further research, we'll take that up. But it's good. And at some point, we as a group will say, how do we elevate this now to the full commission for further debate? But I think there's some nits that we want to work through before doing that. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. I had a generic question. I'm just mindful of time, and I don't know if you wanted to touch anything. We can put this off to something else, but um, I'll take this up with the full commission. So one of the things that we did 10 years ago to amend and modify and sort of bring into the current decade was the use of he and she. Previously, it only had the masculine gender. And so we had gone through and wherever it said he, we put he and she and so forth. The question is, would we can put them instead of not that I'm a big I struggle with that myself, but is that something that we should also think about in terms of neutral gender?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I have a strong opinion anywhere on this. I mean, me personally,
Yeah,
he and she is fine, and
yeah,
I realize some people would identify people as a he, and others might identify that person as she, or vice versa. But I could be 100% wrong on this, but I think there's a very small minority that would be them, right? I could be wrong on that. So you
it's
can't.
not whether they're small or
Oh, I
large, it's
understand that, but
yeah,
But you
whether
can't.
it's more, whether being more generic covers everybody, no matter what you
How
are.
would you be? How would you be more generic?
Them, they.
Put them and they.
I'd like to think about that. I do
Yeah,
find that
sure.
in my past work, we then have to go through quite a bit to rework the verbiage to make it grammatically correct.
Yeah,
Is what I've found in my past.
yeah,
Not that that's not doable, but it's something to think about. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Can you cover that sort of in an omnibus statement in the beginning or the end or
Oh, and definitions, my favorite
Yep,
section right
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
sure.
I mean I'm not opposed to doing it. I was just sort of thinking a little bit of it,
Yeah,
if
no, rather
it's
than going
there,
through
just like
editing
going through the
everything.
whole
Yeah,
thing and
Yeah.
then we're for sure going to miss something in the process. And
Good point, Bill.
yeah,
Yep, we could add that to definitions.
yeah.
Yep. One last thing before we start. I just want to touch upon audit committee because it was on the agenda. Um, if you don't mind, I will
yeah,
stop sharing. Hold on. Let me just do this. I did give you an excerpt for the audit committee.
yeah.
Um, Let me just do something here. Apologies. Um, what I'd like to do is on the audit committee extract, just please take a look. Um, I am proposing this become its own article. Make that reference in the comments. So I suggest we move this to a new article. It becomes Article XXI and miscellaneous moves to XXII. And then I did make some comments, and just for purposes of the document, there are some things that follow on. Just I know we only have 4 minutes. But since, for instance, 5:30, I believe, or not 5:30, some of these other articles lower down on transfer of unexpected balances and these things would stay with finance, um, the Board of Finance article, and not part of the audit committee. So potentially, I know we have only a few minutes left. We can start with this one next time. And essentially too, when you look at this, just look at the comments, and if you have comments prior, send them back to me, and then we can start to go through this article.
Yeah, and we received I didn't get a chance to read it yesterday because of my flights, but in the material on the email system, there was a letter from Chuck Jacobson, who served on the audit committee, and he had some comments. So we ought to consider everybody's comments, but consider his comments as well. So
Yes, and we got a receipt from a comment too about one thing they'd like to get clarity on the audit committee, and I put those in that comment in the document.
good,
Okay,
good, great,
prior
great,
to this. Okay.
And
great,
is
great.
that include you can go over, it's just that to this, timing wise, you can go over a minute unless you guys have to run to something. But I'll just say we did get a comment. I got an oral comment from uh, Rob Fryer. I think you might have gotten it, Jen, too, but by email maybe. Just that he had consulted with the standing committee and has gotten comments, and I'll incorporate that. But it's this one sentence that's in there that apparently, but Bill, I wanted to ask you because you were chair for 6 years or 9 years. There's a report that says that I'm not going to find it. It's the committee shall prepare and send an annual report of its
Yes.
activities to town bodies within 60 days. And according to Rob, they haven't done that. Maybe you did it when you served. I seem to recall you did. At
Yeah,
least your
my
first year.
recollection, well, the town bodies, I mean, certainly we sent it, certainly to the selectmen,
Yeah,
certainly we sent it to the town council for sure,
yeah,
because I made a
yeah.
presentation on that
I
every year.
remember that.
But
Yeah,
also, we sent it to the Board of Finance as well because
yeah,
uh, Chuck Jacobson frequently did that in my stead because I had a public board meeting that conflicted in many times. So I think we certainly intended to cover all the bases, and we should cover all the bases. I think I would say one thing that's sort of lacking somewhere in the document is you make all these presentations, but who really owns the financial statements? Like, Kathleen and Jennifer, you've been involved in,
Yeah.
corporate life. And I mean, there are people who like really, and And is it the Board of Finance? Is it the town council? Is it the, sometimes if you present to too many people, no one's responsible, right? So I'm just sort of stepping back from this a little bit in this finance area, and I don't have an answer right now. Maybe we
Okay.
need to sort of clarify that a little bit. Maybe there's an opportunity to do that in this section here.
Yeah,
Okay.
if we make a new article, I was thinking the same thing, Bill. Um, Obviously, there'll only be a couple of these existing articles that carry in existing citations into the new article, but there are areas to which we could add something about ownership, escalation, and these types of points.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Again, if it
We could do
doesn't
that.
change the context, if it doesn't
doesn't
change the
change the context. No,
Right.
it just talks about more of a process and an activity.
Right.
Yep,
Okay.
super.
Okay. So Jen, for the next, well, so we meet again at 1, correct? I'm
We're
not
going to
mistaken.
see, so just for edification, we're going to get together at 1, and we have 2 interviews today.
Right.
From 1 and 1:30. And then just for awareness, group 3 will start up interviews at 3, I believe it is, if I'm correct. They'll
Right.
be using the same room. So there'll be a break from probably 2 to 3. And then group 3 will take over in the boardroom today.
And we're meeting at 1 o'clock Eastern time, and we are expect about
In
an hour.
person or Zoom.
Yeah, expect about an hour.
Yeah,
Yeah, fine. That's great.
2 interviews. Yep.
Yep, no problem.
And then and it'll be interview in person or Zoom. And just for awareness too, Thursday mornings will always be via Zoom because of all the activity around the budget. It's easier for them if they need space to have a dialogue on the budget pieces. They needed room and space for conference rooms, so I said, fine, we'll give away the room in the mornings. Okay?
Yeah, I'm going to be with
Unless
you
we
by
need that.
Zoom. I'm going to be with you by Zoom for a while.
Okay. Very good. And
Should we, in this session this after 1 o'clock, I've attended some other sessions, and we've certainly Verizon. I mean, people come in and tell us about everything they've done for 20 years and how good. Could we attempt to just try to channel the speakers, tell them we appreciate all the great work they're doing, and we know a lot about what they're doing, but just try to channel.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yep. Get us back on point sometimes to actual changes. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Super. So, anyone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make a motion
I'll
to adjourn the
second it.
meeting. And just a sidebar, Andrew, can you call me about rescheduling you to February 17th? Sorry for adding that, but
And Bill, you second the motion?
I did second the motion. Yes.
Thank you so much. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank
And
you.
I'll
Thank
stop
you.
recording.
Thank you.